would like to say welcome to Mike Bergey, who will make a presentation about small wind market situation in the US. You should know, Mike, that a lot of the eyes from the business is actually looking at US because you've got some new regulation and legislation about the certification and so on, and but probably you'll say something about that as well today. But welcome, Mike, and the microphone is yours.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Not very well. Can you
All right.
turn a little bit up?
Yes. Is that better?
Much better.
Okay, very good. So let me try to share the screen. And do you see my screen?
Yes, indeed.
All right. Very good. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity. I really appreciate these conferences. I'd love to participate in them. The 8-hour time difference is a little bit of a strain, but I want you to know I'm a true believer, and I was with you at 1:30 a.m. this morning. While you were taking coffee breaks and lunch, I was taking naps. But later on, I'll catch up on my sleep, and I'll be with you early tomorrow morning again. So, like many of you, I wear a number of hats, and today my hat is as president of the Distributed Wind Energy Association, which is our U.S. trade association for small and medium wind, although not exclusively. We do also have members who are in the large wind, but behind the meter space. Nels doesn't like politicians. I think most Americans share that view, but I love politicians. I think what they do is fascinating. I think that what they do is extremely important to our industry, and I've always been politically engaged right from the beginning. I've been president of the American Wind Energy Association twice, and that was a good relationship, but we always found that the policies for large wind were not sufficient for small and medium wind, and so our voices weren't heard. About 10 years ago, we formed a separate trade association, and that has allowed us to get our voice out and to have an impact on the policies that create business opportunities for our industries here in the U.S. The picture shows one of our lobbying teams at the U.S. Capitol a few years ago. We hope that in-person lobbying meetings will return. Right now, everything is done online like this meeting, but hope springs eternal that we'll be back to being able to visit legislators in their offices. So DWEA, we don't call it a small wind association or a medium wind. We call it distributed wind, and that's the basket of applications that includes behind the meter, utility bill reduction, off-grid, remote systems, military, all sorts of things, both on-grid and off-grid, and a wide range of sizes from a few watts up to a megawatt scale. But it's not wind farms. We are completely separate from the wind farm industry, which is ably represented in the US by the American Wind Energy Association. So when we meet with politicians, this is our basic message. Distributed wind is important because it reduces greenhouse gases, it provides economic development opportunities and jobs, primarily in rural areas because of the space requirements for wind turbines. We don't push wind turbines on rooftops. That's not what we believe in. We believe that the technology allows us to strengthen the grid and promote resilience. And an important message, and I'll stick on this for a minute, is that we're able to point out that a lot of the turbines installed in America are built in America, creating not only installation jobs, but basic manufacturing jobs. And that is a critical point with politicians worldwide, whether they're on the left, on the right, no matter the type of country, politicians want to create economic opportunity and jobs, and that has to be part of the message that we deliver. And then the final thing is that we seasonally complement solar. We generally don't talk badly about solar. It's great for the environment. It's great for the public. It's a little tough to compete with, but we try not to disparage it. We often get to ask the question, why do we matter? Or it's implied. It's not, maybe not asked directly, but politicians wonder, why does it matter? We have of course, DWEA has done studies that show gigawatts of potential. We have a very powerful study that was done by the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, which is the main laboratory for our U.S. Department of Energy, that looked at the potential for distributed wind. These are not wind farms. This is at a home, at a farm, at a school, at a facility. They found nearly 50 million sites where it was feasible, and the total capacity, the technical capacity as they call it, was 3 terawatts or 3,000 gigawatts for wind turbines under a megawatt. And the energy production from that kind of capacity is much more than the total electricity consumption of the US. So potential is there to have a major impact. If you combine turbines larger than 1 megawatt, you have an additional 5,000 gigawatts of potential capacity. And so that's also a very large potential contributor. And that is actually higher than what is projected for the potential for offshore wind. So it's a significant potential resource, and that's a message that we try to say. And let me point out that my primary message today, primary goal today, is to get you interested in the US market and to get you interested in joining the Distributed Wind Energy Association to help us build the US market. We want more high quality wind turbines, more high quality companies, people who can bring financing and special skills. We see a tremendous opportunity unfolding for reasons I'll get into in a minute, and I hope to get you interested in our market. Because of the drop in solar costs, our industry has had to innovate or die. And so we have been able to obtain funding through politics from the U.S. Department of Energy to fund a number of different companies to develop better technology. And some of those companies have lowered the cost of energy from small wind turbines by up to 60%. When I say encouraged, it was do or die. So the industry in the U.S. is very innovative and working hard to lower costs. And the trend that we see that creates a much larger market opportunity is the move towards what we call beneficial electrification. And that is primarily at the heart of it using clean energy to provide heat instead and transportation instead of fossil fuels. And we even see that on the farm with electric pickup trucks and electric tractors. For the small wind industry and medium wind industry, the key factor is that when we get our costs down low enough, we can compete with propane and fuel oil, which is cheap, which is more expensive than natural gas. And so we can, in these areas where heating is not done through a pipeline, the fuel is not delivered through a pipeline, we have a much better chance of competing with the cost of energy. And we also see that same thing at the residential scale to offset propane and fuel oil for home heating. And I'll point out that we have an advantage over solar because our resource, particularly at the higher latitudes, is much better in the winter when you need the heat than solar is. And the new electronics that are emerging, and I know Nels is very confident in this area and working on it as we are. The new electronics allow us to integrate storage, allow both grid following and grid forming capabilities, so we can provide the resiliency and the power during outages, even peak shaving for the utility. We're doing a number of projects now where instead of being competitors with the utility, we're partners. And so we're helping them to lower their costs and providing them new sources of revenue. And it's a much better dynamic and creates a much better business opportunity. So here's a quick snapshot of America. Here's America 101 if you're in the wind business. Our electricity costs range from 8 to 30 cents a kilowatt hour. The average is only about 12 cents per kilowatt hour. But if you go to places like California or New York, New Jersey, the power rates are much higher, and they have that makes for a good market. The wind resources are typically 5 to 6.5 meters per second at 30 meters. And I say 30 meters because we have lots of trees. And so you can't come here with a 10 meter or 15 meter tower and be successful. You've got to get up 24 meters and above. Our average tower height right now for 10 and 15 kWs is 37 meters. There is limited conventional financing options. Banks are generally not loaning on this. There are some exceptions, but companies who can bring in financing would have an advantage. We have a federal 20% tax, 26% tax credit, was 30% last year. It's scheduled to go down to 22% next year. And that tax credit, so only people who are paying taxes, individuals and corporations, so nonprofits can't use this subsidy, but it's still very powerful. It does require certification. There are also 25% agricultural grants that are done twice a year from the USDA on a competitive application process basis. And we have lost, wind has a hard time competing with solar and efficiency projects on that, but we're working with USDA to improve that. There are a few state incentives. California, for example, has a 90 cent per watt rebate under the SGIP program, something you should look into. When you combine that with the high electric rates there, it's a good market, but it does require very sophisticated electronics that allow the utilities to actually control your VARs and call on your system during system emergencies. Currently the market in the US is small. There's relatively limited competition, only a few suppliers right now, a lot of people in development, but few commercial products on the market. Sales are in the hundreds of units per year, so it's not too exciting. And a lot of that is retrofit market. So new turbine on an old tower with an old bad wind turbine. But we do see a brighter day ahead. And I have to point out that the COVID situation has depressed sales a little bit. So the new situation, well, it's a happier day in the US. President Trump was not a great fan of wind turbines, but President-elect Biden is, and that is going to have a huge effect upon the policies and the direction of the US government. So we're excited about the next 4 years and perhaps longer than that. So we think the US market is poised for growth because the Biden climate change agenda is going to offer new support programs. We're likely to see infrastructure projects to include wind. We're likely to see federal agency purchases of wind and solar. We're going to see probably subsidies extended and expanded. And so it's a completely different day from the last 4 years. Our association has introduced a bipartisan, that means both Republicans and Democrats have supported the bill. We have a bill to extend the tax credit for 5 years at a 30% level, and to increase the size limit, which is currently 100 kilowatts, to 10 megawatts. And we've been successful in, again this year, for the 3rd or 4th year in a row, securing $10 million in distributed wind R&D funding at the US Department of Energy. Under Trump, that what they could do was limited by the fact he didn't like wind turbines. But under Biden, they'll be able to work on things that are more important to the industry, such as deployment and soft costs, such as permitting, sales taxes, property taxes, and the like. So these are exciting times. Our association has also launched a partnership with the U.S. Department of Agriculture to increase the wind energy grants to rural business markets. We think that that's going to lead to hundreds of new sales with that 25% additional subsidy, which can be used in addition to the tax credits. So the economics work well. We think we're addressing some of the problems that have limited participation in the past. We have updated our U.S. turbine certification standard to reduce burdens and costs. I'll talk about that some more in a minute, but we think that we're trying to reduce the barriers to innovation. And then finally, I'd like to point out that the Department of Energy programs in the distributed wind space are helping to expand our markets. They're working, supporting technology development, and some foreign companies, if they have a U.S. presence, are getting U.S. funding for technology development and certification. So if you are not an American-based company, that doesn't mean that you can't work away to get that support. They're doing improved wind maps and micrositing analytics, working on microgrid integration and cybersecurity issues, and then they've got some work on deployable turbines for military and disaster relief. I mentioned the standards development. This is, I know it's kind of busy, but the highlights of the reforms that we did, we changed the annual energy rating wind speed from 5 meters per second to 6 meters per second to provide a more level playing field with the way in which solar is projected and talked about or predicted. We have reduced the duration test burdens and backfilled that with a surveillance program. After you get certification, you're on probation for 3 years. We've expanded the scope to 150 kilowatts peak power so that we can get some medium-sized wind turbines certified without having to go through the onerous 1400-1 requirements. And we've reduced some of the other requirements across the board. In particular, there's one thing I'd like to point out, and that is the microturbine requirements. Very few microturbines could justify spending several $100,000 to get full type certifications. So under our new scheme, they'll have to do a power performance test, safety and function test, and a duration test, but they won't have to do acoustics testing, design analysis, or the blade test. So we're hoping to have more small wind turbines on the market. So the end of my pitch is that we'd like you to join us. I think that joining the Distributed Wind Energy Association in the U.S. is the best way to understand the U.S. market, find resellers, support the market expansion, and create your U.S. market. Please come join us. DWEA's primary focus is on U.S. federal policy. We're strongly represented in Washington, D.C., and we are effective. We get things done. We get policies that help businesses in the small and medium wind space. We have no administration. We are administered on a voluntary basis, which means all of your dues income, 95% of it is going to go towards that lobbying activity. Big bang for the buck. A membership start at $600, $240 for resellers and institutions, and we can bill quarterly or half year, whatever you'd like. And finally, we have our 2021 annual conference and lobby day is now rescheduled for June 8th through 10th in Washington, D.C., in the area there. And we hope that the COVID situation will be resolved enough by then that we can do in-person meetings and do the networking. But I would like to invite you to join DWEA and join us here in the U.S. market. And thank you for your attention today.
Thank you very much, Mike. It has been very informative, and thank you on behalf of the whole audience for your invitation to participate in the US, and also for export or other places in the world to go into the American market. And it seems that you have made it a bit easier for microwind to get in, and that we only can say is a good thing. And that's anyhow my point of view. And we also know about that other changes have been coming with the 6 meter instead of 5 meter per second and so on. First of all, I would like to ask the audience if there are any questions or comments. Well, in the meantime, until people has digested your speech, your presentation, I would like to raise a question myself. It seems as the American market is opening again for foreign wind turbines. It has been before, but as you said, it has been very dominated by American produced wind turbines, and very few, and it has been often been difficult for foreign companies to get into US because of different restrictions and so on. Are there taken any sorts of means to get it easier for foreign companies to get in? I remember you said a little bit about it, but can you please maybe express it in more detail?
Well, I think the reduction in the burden of certification is an important step. The subsidies are not tied to American products. Any imported products. I think our import tariffs are quite reasonable, quite small, in a couple of % range. I think the biggest barrier has been the need for taller towers, and companies who've had a solution that involved lowering the turbine for maintenance have found that doesn't work so well here because of the trees and the taller tower requirements. It's a 60 hertz grid, and you have to have your electronics certified to the safety standards here, UL 1741 and the emerging UL 1741 SA. Those are the same barriers that I face when I go to Europe. So every domestic manufacturers just have a home field advantage. And if you want to export, there's a price to pay, an investment to get yourself set up technically, and then of course there's the cost to develop a distribution channel. But we hope to make the U.S. a significant enough market that we'll have a lot more imported turbines coming in and helping us to grow the market.
Do you think it would be possible to have it certification made other places than in the US? Could be in Europe or in Asia, or? Yeah,
I mean, I think that's the holy grail, to have certify once, qualify everywhere. But that requires either reciprocity agreements or an alignment of the requirements. Even when the standards were almost identical in the U.S., UK, and Japan, it was quite expensive to get a UK certification agency or a Japanese certification agency to take this and review the same body of work and provide their own certification. So, I think there are some efforts underway to try to have reciprocity. We would certainly support that, because nobody likes to pay for you know, certification even once, and paying for it 5, 6, 7 times is very painful. But that hasn't happened yet.
No, unfortunately not, because as I see it, it's a business in itself about the certification, and it shouldn't be. Actually, it should be a service, and therefore, anyhow, that's what I'm working for, and I hope that also that you can give me a hand working for it, that it will be more affordable to get these certifications, to make the also to make the market more transparent.
Yeah, so I share that with you. I will point out that we do need certification. There are so many bozos and shysters and snake oil salesmen that if you just, even if there's no subsidy, incentive money, taxpayer money involved, you need some way of protecting the public from these cheats.
I fully agree, and that's actually what we're working very hard for here in Europe, and I think in many other places in the world. That certification is that's the consumer's security for having a product which works, and that he knows that it has is a duration for life of a turbine. It's a 3-year or is it 25 years, and that's important to know when you buy it, because 3-year turbine, well, that should be much cheaper than the other one. And so it is. If you buy quality, you pay for what you get. So and that's therefore we need the certification. Fully agree upon that. But I hope that we can find out some very good ways to have some kind of a mutual certification system, or anyhow that they can adopt each other in a better way. But thank you for the invitation, and but we can take it up later on, Mike, and I would like to do that.
Very good.
So, but there's no further questions. Is there one? Yeah. No. Okay. There it is. I'd like to thank you very much. There was no more questions, but in half an hour we'll see, make a follow up, and probably somebody has come up with some questions. So we'll take it up there.
Thanks again.
And then thank you very much, Mike, for your very good presentation.